Respected dais, a very close friend of mine and MLC Government of Karnataka, Professor Talwar. Another friend who is heading the Department of Studies in Economics, Karnataka University, Dharwad, Professor Nagur. Dr. Raghavendra, Dr. Matpati, IPA Coordinator, Dr. Khoth, all faculty of Lingaraj College, dear students and friends. At the very outset, I must thank Lingaraj College for providing me an opportunity to deliver a lecture on a very important topic, that is Union Budget 21-22. Really, it's a privilege for me, because during my student period, I had heard of the College of Lingaraj. For the first time I coming to Lingaraj College, I have came several times in Belgaum and RCU when Professor Talwar and other friends were there. But for the first time I coming to Lingaraj for this special occasion. Thank you one and all. Now the topic is Union Budget for 21-22. Next. So far as taking into consideration time constraint, I will not go to the theoretical part of budget. Just for the sake of students, I will touch upon what budget is and what can be purposes, what can be categories. Just in brief, I will touch upon. But my focus will be on Union Budget 21-22, its analysis and interpretation. For all of us who are kind information, I will be analyzing this budget in a academic perspective. I have no any connections with any political parties or political processes as well. Just as a teacher, as a researcher, because my specialization or area of specialization is public economics, public finance. It is therefore what I am trying to place before the analysis and interpretation of the budget. It is exclusively as a teacher. It is exclusively as a researcher. It will be unbiased. It will be impartial. What I analyze, what I try to explain, that will be just impartial, and in academic perspective, just I must clear. Go ahead. Just I will touch upon what budget is. All of us see that finance minister goes with the briefcase. Now it is purse. Previously it was suitcase. Then it turned to briefcase, and now it is purse. What is important? Whether it is briefcase or suitcase or whether that purse, that is not important. What is important is what is there in that briefcase or in that purse or in that suitcase. That is important, and that is document. That is financial documents. Thus, budget is, when we look at the etymology or origin of the term public budget, it is found that what are the financial documents, those are there in that briefcase, in that purse, in that suitcase, that is known as public budget. And Rennie, Town and below, they have very exclusively tried to explain what is meant by public budget. To summarize or to be very brief, public budget is a pre-approved plan of the financial documents such as revenue, expenditure, and the activities and functions the government is going to perform in the coming or forthcoming year, financial or fiscal year. That is known as public budget. There are two approaches exclusively looking towards public budget. One is known as classical approach and another is known as modern approach. Classical approach was of the opinion that public expenditure is extravagant and there is no need for undertaking public expenditure in large scale. It can adversely affect the economy and society as a whole. That was the approach of the classical theory or classical perspective. But according to the modern economists like Dalton, public expenditure cannot be unproductive. It is always productive, and it plays a very important role in growth and development of the economy, especially making the process of socio-economic development more rapid and comprehensive. In that direction, the analysis and explanation modern economists have given so far as the modern approach is concerned. Now, there are different objectives and purposes for which public budget is being prepared and implemented. There can be need of the planning, need of the time, need of the funds, collection of funds, efficiency in expenditure, what past experiences, where we have to go, and current programs. It can be a means of economic stability. Likewise, it can be the means of public accountability of the government as well. Now, budget is classified into different categories. Traditional classification, there modern classification is there. There is no need for going into the details. So, I will skip that. Go ahead. These are the measures of deficit. That is fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, overall budgetary deficit. Number of 5-6 categories are there. Go ahead. Now, this is budget making process as per Article 112 of Constitution. It is permitted to the government, central government, to prepare a budget and get sanction and consequently to implement that. Likewise, state governments have also provision in the Constitution. As the result of that, those can prepare and implement and enforce the budget that is there for the coming fiscal year. Go ahead. This is very important. When we want to assess any budget, when we want to examine any budget, that cannot be assessed into open year. That is, baseless assessment of the public budget cannot be endeavored, it cannot be attempted. Budget can be analyzed, it can be assessed having socio-economic background of the economy or country. And in this perspective, before looking at what the budget is, what provisions are there, what priorities given in the budget, that we can arrive at unless and until what socio-economic condition is there, socio-economic background of the economy is there, that only enables us, that only facilitates us what is the direction of the public budget, whether it is correct, whether it is wrong, whether it is partially correct, whether it is partial wrong. That we can reveal then and then only when socio-economic situation of that country, socio-economic condition of that country is taken into account. And for that reason, some of the indicators that enables in understanding what is economic situation of the country like us, and what is the social background of Indian economy, that I will try to explain in brief. As the result of that, further analysis and interpretation of the budget, that will be very simpler and easier to analyze and interpretation. Now, looking at what is economic scenario in 21-22, it is predicted that GDP of India will grow at the rate of 11%. That forecasting has been given by the government of India. And at monetary or nominal GDP, when it is taken into account, it is at current prices. Government of India forecast that it will grow at the rate of 15.4%. Supplementary to that, during 2019-20, the real GDP of India grew at the rate of 2.4%, and in 21-22 it will grow at 11.5%, and 22-23 it will grow at 6.8%. These are the forecastings given by the government of India. The forecasting of the IMF is there, that IMF forecast that GDP of India will grow at the rate of 11.5% in 21-22. That forecast is also there. It is found that during 21-22, there is a contraction of GDP of India for the entire year. It stood at 7.7%. And for the 3 months or quarter-wise growth is taken into account, it is found that it has grown very rapidly. It has declined very rapidly. In the first quarter, it declined by 23.9%, and in the second quarter, it declined less than that, 7.5%, like that. And on an average, the decline in the GDP growth of India, that stood at more than 7.5% or 7.4%, like this. But so far as recent position is concerned, it is found that a little bit improvement is taking place, and some of the indicators that I have tried to place before you, how the GST collections are increasing, e-way bills are increasing, rail transport is increasing, power consumption is increasing. Some of the indicators, those are showing positive growth, positive improvement so far as post-COVID scenario of the Indian economy is concerned. Now, manufacturing sector has not shown any positive growth. It was just agriculture. Agriculture played a very important role. For the entire year, it grew at the rate of more than 3%, 3.4% like that. And that was only productive sector in the economy, which was positive so far as its growth is concerned. Supplementary to that, all productive sectors and their subsectors have registered negative growth, and the negativity was significantly higher and greater. That is necessary to be taken into consideration. This construction, trade, hospitality, banking, those have also shown negative growth. More importantly, go ahead. Food prices are increasing. Go ahead. External sector is a little bit improvement is found. Go ahead. Exports have declined. Exports have declined. Imports have declined, but the growth in decline in imports is more than that of the exports. That is also there. Go ahead. These were some of the issues or indicators relating to what economic scenario of Indian economy is there that I wanted to close before you. Supplementary to that, when we refer to any economy or any country, what social situation is there, what social conditions are there, by taking into consideration some of the indicators that I am trying to place before you. Number one is unemployment. Rate of unemployment is significantly increasing. It is significantly increasing. You might be remembering in 2016-17, the NSSO report was presented. And at that time, the rate of unemployment, as per the NSSO report, was just 6.2%. And it was highest in last 40 years. It was highest in last 40 years. But proceed to that, it is found that the rate of unemployment is significantly increasing. Just we can consider for India as a whole, in January, from February 20, it was 7.76%. In May 20, it was 21.73%. It shows a rising trend. A little bit decline is found, and in January 21, it is 6.53%. As per economic theory, all of us know 3% of rate of unemployment is called as natural rate of unemployment, that is affordable and bearable, and that can take place, that can exist in any economy because of the technological changes, policy changes. But when we look at this, it is higher, and India is having a demographic dividend benefit. Whether it will enable us in exploiting and extracting the benefits of demographic dividend, that poses a question. Go ahead. Previous. One more. Previous. This is latest figure for 3rd February 21. For India as a whole, it was 6.2%. Urban, it was 8.1%, and for rural areas, it is 5.4%. Go ahead. This is across the states rate of unemployment. I will not go into. Go ahead. One more very important thing that I want to place before you: economic inequalities are growing very rapidly and significantly, and unfortunately during corona pandemic also, during lockdown period also, inequalities have increased very significantly, and that data tells us that in India and China, inequalities are growing. As per the latest data in 2019, it is found that 21% for the 21% for India, it was 11% in 1990. That growth shows. Go ahead. Oxfam has given a report before corona pandemic period, and Oxfam says 1% families are possessing 73% share of income wealth. That shows inequality. And recently, Oxfam has given report, and that shows further inequalities have been intensified even during the corona pandemic. That shows us how the inequalities are intensifying, how the gravity is increasing in the country like us. That requires to be taken into consideration. Go ahead. Then previous. One more important is poverty. Already poverty is underestimated because the poverty line is not up to the mark. At international level, poverty line is $2 per day per capita. But in India, as per the C. Rangarajan committee, that is the latest committee which estimates and defines poverty line, and that says in rural areas, 32 rupees per day per capita is above the poverty line, and in cities and metropolitan city it is 47 rupees. This means that in Belgaum, 50 rupees are sufficient, 47 rupees are sufficient so far as for the meeting consumption need. That is what C. Rangarajan has tried to define the poverty line, and that is the latest definition of poverty line or poverty line definition that has been given us. During the corona pandemic, because of the lockdown policy, all economic activities are stopped except agriculture was comparatively better and significant. Employment generation fell very significantly. The problem of informal unemployment and migrant labor that was very intensified, and as the result of that, crores of people were trapped into the poverty trap, and that has taken place. Go ahead. The problem of malnutrition is there, problem of child labor is there, child marriage problem is there. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, previous. Just back, previous. Okay. This gives us an idea how we are spending on social services. Education, it is 3.3% of GDP, both central government and state government. That is figure for 2018-19. On health, it is just 1.5. In economic survey, it is prescribed that, suggested to the government that expenditure on health should be 3.5%. I will refer later on. Go ahead. Next. This gives us data about education status, how the drawback, that gross enrollment ratio is there, dropout is there, people-teacher ratio is there. In higher education, what position? 26% is gross enrollment ratio. Disparities there between male and female, rural, urban, across the social groups as well. Go ahead. This is labor participation. Already I have touched upon unemployment. This is status of health, maternal mortality rate, some of the indicators that I have tried to place before us, and how those are there, how those are intensive, I would say, so far as the maternal mortality ratio or rate is taken into consideration. Go ahead. This is the socio-economic background in which we have to assess budget for 2021-22, which has been presented by Honorable Finance Minister. The budget is divided into six parts. One is health and well-being, physical and financial capital and infrastructure, inclusive development for aspirational India, then human capital, innovation and research and development, and minimum government and maximum governance. Go ahead. Now, when I look at this budget has concentrated on health sector improvement or development. The focus area of this budget is on health and health sector improvement and development. And one more area that I got, which has been given a preference priority in this budget, that is infrastructure development. These are the two areas on which this budget focuses. And as per my observation, as per my study, all other areas to that extent have not taken care, or attention has not been reached of the government that is there. Then what provisions are there relating to health sector? Just I will sum up. Number one is that new Prime Minister Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana will be started, for which 64,180 crore rupees for the 6-year period have been allotted. And it is in addition to National Health Mission, that is, all of us know, this corona pandemic has exposed our health sector, especially public health sector. During corona, it was expected to be given treatment in public institutions and hospitals, but to that extent, those were not available, and infrastructure was inadequate to the greater extent possible. And private sector didn't respond to the extent which was desirable and it was expected. And consequently, that posed heavy stress on health sector in general and public health sector in particular. Consequently, the government was cautious, and it gave a priority and importance and preference to the health sector that is there. The government is going to set up health institutions, 17,788 in rural areas and 11,024 in urban areas. They have named it as a health and wellness center. Then they are going to set up health labs in 11 3,382 blocks, and in 11 states they are going to set up. Supplementary to that, they are going to set up hospitals in 602 districts and 12 institutions, central institutions. In supplementary to that, 5 regional branches and 20 metropolitan health surveillance through National Center for Disease Control that they are going to set up. Then expansion of health information portal is there. 7 new public health units they are going to set up in addition to 33 which are existing. These are some of the provisions. 15 health emergency operation centers and 2 mobile hospitals the government is going to set up. That is there. Go ahead. For vaccine, some provision is made. That is 35,000 crore rupees for COVID-19 vaccine. It has been allotted. Go ahead. Next. Okay. Then next area on which the government of India has given focus, that is infrastructure development. Under this infrastructure development, especially the government is of the opinion that there is a need for infrastructure development as per the Atmanirbhar scheme, Atmanirbhar India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, they wanted to realize. Here the government mentions we want to realize $5 trillion economy. We want to realize $5 trillion economy, that is there. For that reason, manufacturing sector should go at double digit, the government says. And PLI scheme, that is productivity linked scheme, it is continued in 13 sectors. And in 1.96 crores rupees have been allotted for the 5-year period so far as this PLI is concerned. For textile development, that mega park the government will set up. And supplementary to that, these parks will be especially for promote of exports. 7 textile parks the government is going to set up in coming financial year. Supplementary to that, other infrastructure development provisions have been made. That is National Infrastructure Pipeline Plan, whatever is pending, those are going to be completed. Go ahead. Then financing of infrastructure through development financial institution. Asset monetization, whatever assets which are available with the government and government undertakings, public sector undertakings, railway can be there, airport can be there, road transport can be there. Those assets are going to be monetized by the government having intention to mobilize revenue or collect revenue. Go ahead. Supplementary to that, budget for infrastructure development has been increased. And one more peculiarity is capital expenditure proportion has been increased. Proportion of capital expenditure has been increased significantly compared to the previous year or last year. In addition to that, go ahead. Road and highway infrastructure development, some provisions have been made, and the road and highway sector development, those are the government is going to speed up. Supplementary to that, highway, that is investment in Madurai-Kollam corridor, Chittoor, Thachur, then that work will be started. And National Highway Mumbai to Kanyakumari corridor and to Kerala. These are some of the activities and programs the government is going to carry out. Kolkata, Siliguri, that corridor it is going to develop so far as road construction is concerned. Go ahead. Railway infrastructure, some provisions have been made in railway infrastructure so that railway can be developed. Details are there. I am not explaining all details. Go ahead. Urban infrastructure, for urban infrastructure development, especially city urban road transport, urban water supply, for that provision has been made. Go ahead. Power infrastructure, some power infrastructure provisions have been made, and the government is thinking of alternative mechanism to distribute power. It is not just a state. Here in Maharashtra, it is MSEB. MSEB is a prominent agency in supplying the power or electricity. The government is thinking competition should be created there, and alternative sources of distribution of power that will be there. Go ahead. Port, shipping, waterways, some provisions are there. Go ahead. Some petroleum, natural gas, some measures have been, some initiatives have been undertaken. Go ahead. Financial capital improvements to increase flows of financial capital. Some reforms have been carried out, have been proposed in this budget. One more provision, that is in insurance sector, has been opened up for the direct financial foreign investment. Previously it was 47%, it has increased to 74%, a significant increase in foreign direct investment into the insurance sector that has been carried out. Go ahead. Deposit in, no, go ahead, go, process, go ahead, go. For inclusive development, some agriculture reforms have been carried out. Some provisions, Swamitwa scheme and some other provisions, micro irrigation works, rural infrastructure development already have developed. Some provisions have been made relating to agriculture and fishery development, that Kochi, Chennai, Visakhapatnam, that fishing hub the government desires to create. Go ahead. Migrant, go ahead. Go last part. These are the major provisions. One more provision just I will try to place before you, relating to education. Relating to education, Central University, the government is going to set up in Leh, which is in Ladakh. Ladakh now recently created Union Territory. And post-matric scholarship that is continued, that provision is there. This is relating to higher education. So far as secondary education is concerned, some schools the government is going to modernize as per the requirement of national education policy. And in some tribal areas, the government is going to modify and renovate some of the schools in tribal area. These are the provisions relating to higher education, relating to school education that is there. Go last part. Go. You have to go long way. Go. Now, what my analysis is there that I am trying to place before you. Go ahead. Next. Previous. Just previous. No, okay. That, already I have summarized that. Government desires to concentrate on health sector and infrastructure. A little bit attention is there towards agriculture. To the extent required, manufacturing is neglected. Industry sector is neglected. A little bit attention is there towards micro, small, medium enterprises. Excluding that, no attention is required, has been paid towards the industry sector. Supplementary to that, already I have mentioned that the problem of economic inequality is continuously increasing. But in this budget, no reference of the inequality is there. Whether inequality is there, it is to be tackled, what can be policies, measures, no reference is there. It is necessary to be taken into account. Supplementary to that, like that of inequality, problem of poverty and unemployment is also intensive because of the lockdown policy and the COVID-19 pandemic. Because employment fell very rapidly and consequently unemployment grew very rapidly. And when in 2016-17 just the rate of unemployment was 6.2%, we said it is not to that extent higher and greater, but it was higher for the last 40 years. And in this corona pandemic, it was more than 23%. And now it is about 10%. It is intensive. Supplementary to that, problems of migrant labor, informal labor, those are there. The point which I want to bring to your notice is that to the extent required, employment generation, this budget has not paid attention. Because the government thinks, or this budget is of the opinion that only infrastructure development can help us in generating employment opportunities. But I am of the opinion that to that extent it will not be sufficient and adequate as well. Because employment generation is a very crucial and very intensive problem. And there was need for paying attention towards the employment generation. But it is missed out, or I would say partial attention has been paid so far as employment, and consequently unemployment rate control will be difficult. As the result of that, poverty elimination also will not be realized or will not be successful, because to that extent, on the one hand, poverty reference is not there and measures are not there so far as control of the poverty is concerned. And supplementary to that, actually Manrega was playing a role in employment generation, But so far as allotment to the Manrega in this budget is concerned, it has been reduced significantly compared to the previous year. And in addition to that, Manrega is not there so far as urban area is concerned. Now it is urgent need of the hour to implement Manrega in urban areas as well. But unfortunately, provision towards Manrega has been reduced compared to the previous year that is there. Supplementary to that, actually, number of estimates are there, and those estimates tell us India has been very much diseased by the black money. But in this budget, no reference of like that of inequality, black money is there. It was expected and desirable, how it can be captured and how it can be utilized, because the government is in the desire of revenue mobilization, income mobilization. It was expected to be explored, at least touch upon was required, but the attention has not been received so far as it is concerned. Welfare of the socially marginalized groups, reduction in the allotment assignments have been taken place. That also requires to be taken into consideration. In this backdrop, export promotion is required, but to that extent, export promotion measures are not there. Some measures relating to increase or decrease in custom duties are there, but in addition to that, no provisions are there. As the result of that, we will be in a position to control imports and promote exports, because we are striving for Atmanirbhar Bharat, Reliant India. But to that extent, external sector has not been paid that attention which was required and desirable. So therefore, what I want to place before is that in this budget, the move is towards more making of the free economy, more making of the economy, that is market economy, or I would say it is marching towards the capitalist economy. These provisions are there. And to the extent required and desirable, the role of the government in maintaining the status of mixed economy in particular. And when we look at India in the perspective of constitution, equality, justice, and these are the very important things which are necessary to pay due attention. And budget is prepared as per the provisions in the Constitution of India. So that precaution was necessary to be taken into account while preparing and implementing the budget. But that is not there so far as my analysis is concerned. Supplementary to that, again in this budget and economic survey as well, it is mentioned that India will reach, or it has to reach to the $5 trillion US economy, for which double-digit GDP growth is required. I am of the opinion that rather it is very difficult. Now the growth rate is minus, so how we are realizing the double-digit growth rate, and how it will be possible for us to reach to the $5 trillion economy. We are proposing since 2016-17, when in 2017 that demonetization, that decision or policy was adopted. Since then we are striving for. But since then the growth rate has been a declining trend continuously and persistently. And during the corona pandemic, it increased very rapidly so far as decrease or decline in the growth or GDP is concerned. In this perspective, what I wanted to place before is that realization of the $5 trillion US economy is very difficult. I would say it is impossible. And in this perspective, there is a need for bringing about revisions in the public budget that has been presented in the parliament for revision discussions, and still time is there for making revisions and modifications in the budget. So my suggestions are, emphasis on industry development should be there. Economic history of the world tells us that those countries which succeeded in achieving industrial development, those have been emerged as industrially developed as well as economically developed countries. Previously, those were agricultural countries and prominently agricultural backward countries. So in this budget, there is a need for giving emphasis or attention, more increased attention toward the industrial development, and those measures, those policies are necessary to be incorporated, number one. Number two is that for increasing investment in industry sector, some incentives and encouragements are required. Unless and until incentives are given, the investors are not in a position to undertake investment. And it is therefore investment, incentives are necessary. Only credit facilities provided. That doesn't mean that investors and industrialists are going to invest. That is not the case. Incentives, inspirations are necessary, motivations are necessary, encouragements are necessary to be given, but this change or modification is required. There is a need for reducing overburdened agriculture. At this moment, also more than 60%, we call it as a discarded unemployment, whose marginal productivity is zero, it is minus. That provision is required, and therefore, how we are in a position to generate non-agriculture employment as the result of that? Overburdened agriculture can be released. That provision is necessary to be undertaken, and supplementary to that, what growth policy that we are going to formulate and implement, it should have an element of employment generation. It should be always pro-employment generating or pro-employment policy, and such activities are necessary to be incorporated. As the result of that, on the one hand, employment generation will increase, on the other hand, unemployment will be reduced. At the same time, we have a demographic dividend benefit that can be exploited, extracted, and utilized. As the result of that, that will positively affect growth and development of the economy that is there. There is an acute need of strengthening and expanding Manrega. Allocations to Manrega are necessary to be allocated, and more importantly, there is a need for applying Manrega in urban areas, because in urban areas also informal sector is significantly higher and greater, and COVID-19 pandemic has very adversely affected informal sector in urban areas as well. So the use or adoption of the Manrega in urban areas is of crucial importance. Special efforts are necessary to be incorporated in budget. As the result of that, inequalities can be controlled. Inequalities are necessary to be controlled. Number of measures are required. Attention should be there, necessary to be given to poverty elimination. At global level, especially in corona pandemic and before also, universal basic scheme is being implemented. Every citizen has a right to live in that country, and it is duty and responsibility of the government to make a survival, to provide for survival. And for that reason, universal basic income scheme that is useful, it is being practiced across the countries in the world, and now it is high time to accept and implement in the country like us. That is required. Supplementary to that, there is a need for changing our center of development policy from cities and metropolitan cities to rural and semi-urban areas. That is urgently needed, because a wide gap is there between urban and rural areas. That gap is necessary to be met. Supplementary to that, expenditure on education is necessary to be increased. National education policy, the implementation will take place recently only, and it has mentioned that expenditure on education should be at least 6% of GDP. Actually, in 1968, Kothariya Commission was appointed, and Kothariya Commission recommended to the government expenditure on education should be 6% of GDP. But now in this year, 2021-22, we are thinking of at least to be reached to the 6% of GDP. But whatever allocations in this budget are there, those are not to the extent or not up to the mark. As the result of that, we will reach to the 6% of GDP. That attention, that modification is required. Supplementary to that, so far as health sector is concerned, our health sector is dominated by private sector. The participation of public sector or government in health sector is very insignificant, or I would say it is little bit. So there is a need for monitoring and control of the health sector by private health sector. You might have experienced it in corona pandemic. Multi-speciality, super speciality hospitals are there, but they didn't give treatment to the corona patient, COVID-19 patient. And even when government interfere, then only some of the private institutions, health institutions gave treatment. Now there is a need for monitoring of the private health sector, because it is dominated. Multi-speciality, super speciality, specialty hospital, especially in cities and metropolitan cities are there, and that attention in the budget is necessary to be given, necessary to be required. Supplementary to that, it is high time to explore and utilize black money. As the result of that, the government will be in a position to mobilize necessary revenue. Likewise, there is a need for increased allotment towards the welfare of socially, economically backward community, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. So far as their welfare is concerned, that attention is required. Trade reforms are required, export promotion measures are required. At the same time, control of the imports is also of greater importance. That will help us in reducing our dependence over the foreign countries, and that will help us for Reliant India or Atmanirbhar Bharat that is there. Lastly, Indian economy is a mixed economy. It is not a capitalist economy, or it is not a free market economy. And the existence of the mixed economy of India should be maintained, preserved and protected. And for that reason, what is required, the survival existence of the public sector is required. Already private sector is there, it is already dominated. But again, we are eliminating existence and prevalence of the public sector. That should be restricted, that should be arrested. When in that direction the efforts will be made, I am damn sure the budget will be successful. It will help us the predetermined objectives for which it has been prepared and it is going to be implemented. But lot of revisions, suggestions and modifications are required. The direction in which I have tried to place before you some of the suggestions, I have not touched upon all the aspects and elements of the public budget. It's a very wide document, and rather it is not possible in the lecture of 1 or less than 1 hour time period. So I have tried to place before you some of the issues on which there is a need for paying attention, but at the same time I have also mentioned that a very important place is given to health and infrastructure development, but other areas also there on which there is a need for paying increased attention, and some of the revisions that I have tried to place before you. If in that direction the efforts will be made, I hope this budget will be effective. I hope the theoretical background for which the budget is prepared, it will realize and it will materialize. I hope in that direction the efforts will be made. With these words, I must stop here. Other speakers are there. Once again, thank you one and all. Thank you very much. If any questions or any comments or queries are there, those are most welcome. And I am stopping here. Thank you one and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable information. Now I request Professor B.H. Nagu, Department of Economics, Karnataka University, Dharwad, to discuss about